Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series, Great Expectations. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations. The business of this enchanter on earth being principally to be talked at, sung at, butted at, danced at, and flashed at fires of various colors, he had a good deal of time on his hands. And I observed with great surprise that he devoted it to staring in my direction as if he were lost in amazement. There was something so remarkable in the increasing glare of Mr. Wopsle's eye, and he seemed to be turning so many things over in his mind, and to grow so confused that I could not make it out. I sat thinking of it long after he had ascended to the clouds in a large watch case, and still I could not make it out. I was still thinking of it when I came out of the theater an hour afterwards, and found him waiting for me near the door. "How do you do?" said I, shaking hands with him as we turned down the street together. "I saw that you saw me." "Saw you, Mr. Pip?" he returned. "Yes, of course I saw you. But who else was there?" "Who else?" "It is the strangest thing," said Mr. Wopsle, drifting into his lost look again. "And yet I could swear to him." Becoming alarmed, I entreated Mr. Wopsle to explain his meaning. "Whether I should have noticed him at first but for your being there," said Mr. Wopsle, going on in the same lost way. "I can't be positive, yet I think I should." Involuntarily I looked round me, as I was accustomed to look round when I went home, for these mysterious words gave me a chill. "Oh, he can't be in sight," said Mr. Wopsle. "He went out before I went off. I saw him go." Having the reason that I had for being suspicious, I even suspected this poor actor. I mistrusted a design to entrap me into some admission. Therefore, I glanced at him as we walked on together, but said nothing. "I had a ridiculous fancy that he must be with you, Mr. Pip, till I saw that you were quite unconscious of him, sitting behind you there like a ghost." My former chill crept over me again, but I was resolved not to speak yet, for it was quite consistent with his words that he might be set on to induce me to connect these references with Provis. Of course, I was perfectly sure and safe that Provis had not been there. "I dare say you wonder at me, Mr. Pip. Indeed, I see you do. But it is so very strange. You'll hardly believe what I am going to tell you. I could hardly believe it myself, if you told me." "Indeed?" said I. "No, indeed. Mr. Pip, you remember in old times a certain Christmas day, when you were quite a child, and I dined at Gardry's, and some soldiers came to the door to get a pair of handcuffs mended?" I remember it very well. "And you remember that there was a chase after two convicts, and that we joined in it, and that Gardry took you on his back, and that I took the lead, and you kept up with me as well as you could?" I remember it all very well. Better than he thought, except the last clause. "And you remember that we came up with the two in a ditch, and there was a scuffle between them, and that one of them had been severely handled, and much mauled about the face by the other?" I see it all before me. "And that the soldiers lighted torches, and put the two in the center, and that we went on to see the last of them, over the black marshes, the torchlight shining on their faces. I am particular about that, with the torchlight shining on their faces, when there was an outer ring of dark night all about us." "Yes," said I. "I remember all that." "Then," said Mr. Pip, "one of those two prisoners sat behind you tonight. I saw him over yonder. I saw him over your shoulder." Steady, I thought. I asked him then, Which of the two do you suppose you saw? The one who had been mauled, he answered readily. And I'll swear I saw him. The more I think of him, the more certain I am of him. This is very curious, said I, with the best assumption I could put on, of its being nothing more to me. Very curious indeed. I cannot exaggerate the enhanced disquiet into which this conversation threw me, or the special and peculiar terror I felt at Compeyson's having been behind me like a ghost. For if he had ever beaten out of my thoughts for a few moments together since the hiding had begun, it was in those very moments when he was closest to me, and to think that I should be so unconscious of my guard, after all my care, was as if I had shut an avenue of 100 doors to keep him out, and then had found him at my elbow. I could not doubt either that he was there, because I was there, and that however slight an appearance of danger there might be about us, danger was always near and active. I put such questions to Mr. Wopsle as, when did the man come in? He could not tell me that. He saw me, and over my shoulder he saw the man. It was not until he had seen him for some time that he began to identify him. But he had known from the first, vaguely associated him with me, and known him as somehow belonging to me in the old village time. How was he dressed? Prosperously, but not noticeably otherwise, he thought, in black. Was his face at all disfigured? No, he believed not. I believed not too. For, although in my brooding state, I had taken no especial notice of the people behind me, I thought it likely that a face at all disfigured would have attracted my attention. When Mr. Wopsle had imparted to me all that he could recall or I extract, and when I had treated him to a little appropriate refreshment, after the fatigues of the evening we parted. It was between 12 and 1 o'clock when I reached the temple, and the gates were shut. No one was near me when I had come in and went out. Herbert had come in, and we held a very serious council by the fire. But there was nothing to be done, saving to communicate to Wemmick what I had that night found out, and to remind him that we waited for his hint. As I thought that I might compromise him if I went too often to the castle, I made this communication by letter. I wrote it before I went to bed, and went out and posted it. And again no one was near me. Herbert and I agreed that we could do nothing else but be very cautious, and we were very cautious indeed, more cautious than before. And we were very cautious indeed, more cautious than before, if that were possible, and I, for my part, never went near Chinks's basin, except when I rode by, and then I only looked at Mill Pond Bank as I looked at anything else. Chapter 48. The second of the two meetings referred to in the last chapter occurred about a week after the first. I had again left my boat at the wharf below bridge. The time was an hour earlier in the afternoon, and undecided where to dine, I had strolled up into Cheapside, and was strolling along it. Surely the most unsettled person in all the busy concourse, when a large hand was laid upon my shoulder by someone overtaking me. It was Mr. Jaggers's hand, as he passed it through my arm. And we are going in the same direction. We may walk together. Where are you bound for? For the temple, I think, said I. Don't you know? Said Mr. Jaggers. Well, I returned, glad for once to get the better of him in cross-examination. I do not know, for I have not made up my mind. You are going to dine, said Mr. Jaggers. You don't mind admitting that, I suppose? No, I returned. I don't mind admitting that. And are not engaged? I don't mind admitting also that I am not engaged. Then, said Mr. Jaggers, come and dine with me. I was going to excuse myself when he added, Wemmick's coming. So I changed my excuse into an acceptance. The few words I had So I changed my excuse into an acceptance. The few words I had uttered, serving for the beginning of either, and we went along Cheapside and slanted off to Little Britain, while the lights were springing up brilliantly in the shop windows, and the street lamp lighters, scarcely finding ground enough to plant their ladders on in the midst of the afternoon's bustle, were skipping up and down and running in and out, opening more red eyes in the gathering fog than my rushlight tower at the Hummums had opened white eyes in the ghostly wall. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.